When we were talking about open text survey questions, one strategy I suggested was to treat each question as if it was self-contained. In other words, that the initial analysis would treat each question as if it was independent. In this video, we're going to look at how we can use a survey structure to develop a richer set of qualitative data to analyze by designing surveys that allow for the combination of multiple questions as part of an analysis. Qualitative surveys are a method for creating qualitative data that utilizes a survey structure. As opposed to adding a few open text questions, qualitative surveys are more intentional in their focus on creating qualitative data. The survey questions may be formulated to encourage richer responses, for example, using more how and why questions. Researchers can also give clear instructions on the type of information or the level of detail required. Qualitative surveys always have multiple questions that allow for non-numerical responses related to the same topic. We can debate at what point our method becomes a qualitative survey versus being a survey that just includes some open text questions. The researcher's intention here is one important aspect. I'm also going to emphasize that qualitative surveys allow for responses to multiple questions to be analyzed together. Designing surveys that allow for the analysis of combined responses is also how we can use qualitative surveys to get richer data. To help clarify this point, let's consider the following example. Imagine we are studying patients' experiences waiting in an emergency department. Imagine that our first survey question is, how satisfied are you with the wait time so far? Let's imagine that our next question is, if it was faster, would you prefer to be seen by a specialized nurse rather than a physician? Our survey could certainly be longer, but for now, let's just focus on these two questions. We give out our survey, and we get our responses. Survey 1, Survey 2, Survey 3, etc. Then we must decide how we're going to analyze the data we have. We could consider these questions as self-contained and independent. In this way, we can initially take all the responses to question 1 and summarize them. Similarly, we could take all the responses to question 2 and analyze them together, and so on. While our two sample questions are both related to wait times, because of the lack of overlap between them, it may make sense to analyze these questions independently. Imagine that we designed another set of questions that were more connected around the same topic. For example, what if our wait time survey questions are, how do you feel about your wait time so far? Why do you think you feel this way? Based on how you're feeling, what would you suggest being done differently? As a researcher, you can still choose to analyze the responses to each question as if the question was independent and self-contained. Because the alternative set of questions, and likely the responses to them, are closely connected and overlapping, it may make sense to analyze these responses together. We could take all the responses to each survey together as the starting point of our analysis. This would be like taking each participant as the basis of our analysis. Analyzing the responses to multiple survey questions together reduces the responses tied to a specific question. If we start our analysis by looking at all participants' responses to the survey together, we can no longer try to summarize or condense the responses to a specific question, but we don't need to analyze surveys by respondent. We can also choose to analyze all the data for all the questions together. In other words, the initial data set for analysis could be all the responses across all surveys. This combining and analyzing responses detached from the question which generated them is only possible for non-numerical data. It also only works if the responses are rich enough. If we look at our example of a rich response from the previous video, this response gives us enough context and detail that it's meaningful on its own, and we can analyze it without directly reference to the question that was asked. We could then combine this response with similar responses and analyze them together. If I ask a question that resulted in a numerical response, you can't do this. The key point about qualitative surveys is that we can create richer qualitative data sets by designing surveys that generate richer responses and support analyzing the responses to multiple questions together. In the next video, we're going to talk about perhaps the most popular method for creating qualitative data, interviews. Thanks for watching, and hope you continue on to the next video.